Hi, Harvey Hooke here. I want to tell you a bit of a story about myself. This is a two-part video that's about breakups. This first one is about how to break up with someone, and the second part is actually how to get over the breakup. And the reason why I share this is because I actually went through a breakup recently with someone who actually meant a lot to me. And I don't normally share my personal stories just because I'm someone who doesn't really like to talk about those kinds of things personally, but I feel like this is really appropriate for this medium. So I really want to give this because with every situation, you always have to ask yourself, like, why was this the best thing to ever happen to me? And there's always an answer. There is always an answer. So breakups are really tough because you're in a situation where you're trusting part of yourself to someone else. And I don't mean that just like emotionally, that you trust your emotions with someone else. Like more often than not, you end up going about your life trusting a lot of parts of yourself to them, like your day-to-day life, even like little habits that you would normally do by yourself. You stop doing them because the other person then caters for that need. You don't need to do that anymore. And having that person gone in your life it's quite painful. It can tear a lot of those things out. And breaking up with someone is always very hard because we don't want to go down that path. We don't want to do that because we often think like, oh no, it can still work, it can still go, it can still go. So let me ask you this. Have you ever been in a relationship that ended a lot longer than it actually officially ended? And what I mean by that is that you're emotionally switched off, or you're looking for other partners, or you no longer appreciate that person. You start to, like, all those little quirks that you loved, you start to hate. And that situation is actually incredibly, incredibly selfish. Because if you're holding on to a relationship because you don't want to hurt the other person, what you're actually holding on to is the fear of getting hurt yourself and the fear of having to look for someone else. Having to look for someone else. But if you're in the situation where as soon as you realize that it's not going to work and that you're actually, I wouldn't say wasting your time, but that you're actually dragging it along for a lot longer than it needs to, that is the moment where you need to do yourself a favor and do this guy a favor. And if you're a guy watching this, do the girl a favor, because this is universal. Do the person a favor and say, no, it's not working out. I think it should end here. Because what happens if you don't do that, you end up dragging it out for a lot longer. You have the potential for more hurt. All those repressed feelings that you never actually moved out, like you never actually expressed, will start to come out in little weird manifesting ways. Like you'll start to skip out on events, or you'll start to move away from them. The other person will feel your distance more and more, and that'll create more resentment, until it just starts to explode. Alternatively, when you decide, hey, this is not working out, I need to end it here, sure, it hurts, but you're giving yourself so much more time, because time is the one thing that we don't have. We're all going to die someday. We all have limited time. And I know that sounds really like harsh and bleak, and you don't want that on like YouTube, which is like a fun medium. And I love YouTube because it is a fun medium, but that's the thing, that we all have limited time, and you need to respect your time. And if you really love that person, you're going to respect their time. And you're going to say, hey, it's not working, but I'm giving you the gift to go and find someone that does work for you. The first 2 steps on actually breaking up with someone is to actually start that dialogue. That's actually the hardest part, because more often than not, and I want to give you like a secret on how to actually talk about this, like a strategy on how to reveal your feelings in a really honest, genuine way. But if you say things in an accusatory way, it's not going to end well. So if you say something to him like, hey, I don't like your funny hat. If you say something that's like, why don't your friends like me? Or why don't your parents like me? Or why don't you take me out more? Or all that kind of thing. Those are just like leaves on the tree. Those are just they're just like the residual problems that come from the root problem. The root problem is that you don't actually express yourself, or you're not actually expressing how you're feeling. Alternatively, if you bring this up with an I statement, so an I statement is when you actually say, what you do when you do this, it makes me feel like this. Or not even when you do this, you say, it makes me feel like this, or I'm feeling like this. If you accuse him, then what that does is that leaves room for argument. But if you're actually saying how you feel, then he can't dispute that. He might dispute that and be like, so if you say, I feel sad when this happens, when you go out without your friends. He might be like, well, you know, if he accuses you, you can say, well, okay, that's fair enough, but I still feel sad. So what are we going to do about it? And if you can't resolve those issues, because in all honesty, if you actually talk about the issues, sometimes the things resolve themselves because it's like pressure that's released. But if you talk about those issues and the breakup is the natural way it should go, just because you guys aren't that compatible for each other, it's going to come from that, and it's going to come in a wholesome way that will allow you to communicate it, and actually you'll all be better off for the experience. And I'm telling you this because I've been through this so many times. Anyway, the second part of this video is going to come out soon, so make sure to subscribe for that. Mwah. Wait, no, stop.